Hi, welcome to this special series of Hurricane Helene. For the next few episodes, I have invited some industry people from the world of insurance, from reinsurance, modeling, agency president, the people who are serving the general public. And we just want to bring you the view of what is it like from the insurance industry perspective to see a uncommon natural disaster, catastrophic event at this magnitude. And in my opinion, this event will change a few things in the insurance industry of how we do things and how it's going to be handled in the future. So we're going to invite guests, come on the show, and just really have a deeper discussion of how this event will impact general public and also the insurance industry. So we thank you for coming on the show. Hi, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to this special emergency episode of Hurricane Helene. And today I have someone that's on the ground in Florida. And Jason Butts, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate you having me. It's been a crazy few days here in Pinellas County.
Yes, it has been. The whole country is watching you guys. So I just want to start out by make a quick introduction, let our audience know who you are and what your role is, and how this crazy hurricane that came out of nowhere, formed so fast, has affected you, your family, your entire state, right? And also, if you can talk about what insurance playing factor in this, how are you guys affected by this storm?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, first and foremost, this was a storm of epic proportions. Florida has been on the verge of major reform. The market has been slowly opening up here the last couple of months. Our legislature has done a great job, and everybody was just kind of holding their breath that we could get through this storm season without major impact, right? That all stopped last Thursday night. As this storm that was 100 miles away just caused complete devastation. I think, overall, if we try to find the positives in it, it ended up making landfall in a place that for Florida, you never want a storm like this to impact anybody, directed on anybody. But if it's going to hit Florida, most experts would agree, and anybody in the marketplace is going to agree that this was probably the best place for that to happen, a sparsely populated area. But the damage that this caused from south of Pinellas County all the way north along the coast of Florida was just devastating flood damage. So we're still hoping that the home insurance market, the residential market, is going to continue to expand because, again, the Florida carriers and even a couple of the nationals that are still in play here in Florida weren't hurt too bad by wind damage, but the flood was bad, Jeff. I mean, people are digging sand out of their homes, 4 or 5 feet of drywall coming out throughout their house. People's lives are on their front yards right now waiting for FEMA claims adjusters to show up. So I think this was one of my first experiences to see the flood loss so devastating. And it's sad. It's absolutely heartbreaking what's going on. So, to give you a little bit of color, I think, to it, my personal story, we're a little bit inland. So my family was not impacted by the storm. We received very little wind. And so we've seen our share of hurricanes, obviously, here in Florida, but very little wind. When we did, it was gusts here and there, but nothing sustained. So no real damage from wind once you came in, just, I would say a mile or two inland. And so no damage to our home, thank goodness. Thursday night, we spent at a friend's house with a couple other friends who evacuated. They were in an evacuation zone, came to the home. We did what all good Floridians do, which is we poured ourselves a drink and hope for the best. Now what is so interesting is with all of the technology now, people were setting up cameras inside their home. So folks knew the instant water was coming into their houses, and they're watching that play out on their phones in real time. And it's sad, right? So leading up to it, we're just hoping, nothing. And then next thing you know, you see the water splashing up against the sliders. You see the water creeping in. And from there, we knew. Claims get filed immediately. And 9:30 a.m. left the office and showed up at my buddy's house to just complete devastation.
Wow, a lot to take in. Um, so that's the personal side, right? And what does your world look like Friday morning? What does your world look like going to Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, knowing that what just happened over the weekend, and you and your team. By the way, Jason is president at Simply IOA, one of the biggest insurance broker in the country, and you guys have a lot of
Thousands.
Florida customers, right?
Yeah.
Thousands, and if you add Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina, I mean, that is a big footprint of your company and what you guys are responsible for. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, look, I think, and my heart goes out to everybody impacted by the storm. The amount of deaths that have happened and the tragedies that we're seeing in the other states as well again, it's just truly heartbreaking, to see. I think, as Friday, as the sun came up Friday, right? Our jobs as an insurance agent is to be there, to advise, to help, to assist in everything, we can. Luckily, our staff, nobody was really impacted. We had a couple of people, I think that, were needed to evacuate, but then they got home and I think found that their homes had no damage. So from our team's perspective, we were good. And then at that point, I think really, as an agency, we turned to helping the folks that, that we made the promise to. And so the phone started lighting up, walking people through how to file the claims, being there for them, answering any questions that we could, providing them what to do next, right? So they walk in, as my buddy did Friday morning, and they see their house just completely devastated. What do you do? It's almost an overwhelming feeling, right? And I was almost overwhelmed walking into a very close friend's house on Friday and just imagining what if that was me, right? What if those were my two small kids in the room and walking in and books strewn all over the floor, mattresses soaking wet, and just seeing that water line that we've all seen on the news, to experience that firsthand, and knowing for flood that you have to take immediate action, right? Because those flood policies call for you to mitigate that, and the national flood insurance policies also don't cover mold. And so you've got to do everything you can as quick as you can to save your home. And I think that our staff understands that. And so they were there, they're empathetic, taking those phone calls, letting people know what to do, providing information. So in a time of crisis, everybody just wants information. What do I do next? How do I think? How do I feel? And just making sure that you're doing the right thing. Knowing that it could be days before you hear from an adjuster, not because they weren't set up for this, but because the adjusters now are flying in from all over to help with this catastrophic loss, as well as deal with multiple other states. So I think, it was one of those things. We took a lot of phone calls on Friday and into the weekend. I know my cell phone, I've never been as popular as I was this weekend, right? It's the friends and the family that are saying, what do I do? Or, hey, I have a friend or family that's been impacted. Can you give advice or suggestion? And I think that as an insurance agent, that is our time to shine. That is our time to say, we are here. We understand what you're doing, and provide the guidance. And so I think Simply IOA and IOA, our parent company, I think that everybody has that. And I think most agents throughout the country, Jeff, I know that you're connected with lots of them, throughout the United States. And I think that most agents really believe that is the time that is for us to shine, for our insurance carriers to honor that promise. And I will tell you, I think that a lot of the stuff in the news that we've seen, we're all a little bit anxious to make sure that our clients are taken care of. We want to advise them the right way, but we are also wanting to hold our carriers responsible and accountable for helping those insureds in their time of crisis. So I think, overall, folks dealt with it well. Information got out really well from the news channels to say this is what you should and should not do. We'll see what happens. It's a rebuild process. Much of the country has done this before. And so I think, this part of the state will be just as strong as they come back. And, we've got some great leaders here in the state of Florida. Our governor, as you've seen, has been all over the place, hitting towns. Citizens Property Insurance, I serve on the board of governors there. They immediately were in town setting up a catastrophe center to help folks, provide them information. When times like this happen, it is extraordinary what our country does and what our community does to come together to help other people.
So first of all, thank you for everything you do. And, everything you just said, I'm trying to picture it. And being an insurance agent myself, 14 plus years, I've been in there, but most of my customer has been in Virginia and Maryland. And we have different cat events. Our cat events are like hail losses, right?
Yeah.
Bunch of hail hit a bunch of cars, bunch of roof, but like nothing like what you guys are going through. And also, I would assume is probably a little bit different educating people from North Carolina, South Carolina versus Florida, because Florida people are almost like a battle warrior expert when it comes to storms and hurricanes. And most people in Eastern Tennessee and Asheville, North Carolina, which is 6 miles inland, 600 miles inland, they probably never expect this call. So I'm sure you guys are on top of it. And, one of our conversations yesterday when we chatted was you are out on the streets helping your neighbors and driving around. So can you chat a little bit about that? Just being a good neighbor, what's that like right now down there?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think, to my last point, which is when tragedy strikes, Americans have this sense of responding together, right? Politics aside, and man, we are in a nasty political, just times right now. And I think that everybody can throw that away and really focus on helping their neighbors. And I always find hope when things like this happen. And I think that at the end of the day, it's a reminder that most people just have great hearts and want to help others. And I'll give you a few examples. Social media, obviously, there's some good and bad. But when something like this happens, the good in social media, I think can help bond people and bring people together. And so, we saw things like the bridges to our barrier islands. So Pinellas County has barrier islands from the north at Anclote off Tarpon Springs all the way down south, right, almost to DeSoto. And those islands have always historically provided a little bit of protection to the mainland. And so what happens is those folks, they got absolutely crushed with the water. You're talking about the beach literally being pushed into people's homes, condos, businesses. And so our sheriff, for good reason, they closed the bridges because they've got to go ahead. One, you want to make sure you keep out all the riffraff that, try to take advantage of these types of things. But you also want to provide the emergency vehicles the opportunity to get in to help to rescue. We were still rescuing people in Pinellas County, almost 24 hours after the storm. There were still calls coming in that they were responding to, on top of the house fires, on top of the electric vehicle fires, right? So the cars, as you've probably seen in the news, electric vehicles, they don't mix well with water, and so they catch fire. And so it's, and our CFO, Jimmy Petronas, has come out, get your electric vehicles out of your garages, right? Because as soon as they're exposed to salt water, they can catch fire, and they burn at a temperature that essentially our fire departments are just having to stand back. Water's not putting those out. It burns too hot. And so that's going to be an added thing as we look forward to. That's probably a conversation for a different day. But what we were seeing is people connecting on social media who couldn't get to their beachfront homes. And we have a lot of local fishermen, guides, recreational boaters who started offering people rides to their homes, right? So they can get in, so they can start getting their drywall cut out, because we talked a few minutes ago about how mold is not covered under flood policies. And so if you don't get that process started and get that home dried out, you are going to have a total loss on your house, and you're only going to have so much coverage. It's really not going to be enough to, to rip out everything in your home. And so you just see those types of things, boat captains showing up with a cooler full of water, loading people on their homes, driving down the canals, getting people to their homes and telling them they'll pick them up at the end of the day. It's extraordinary. These are people who don't know each other, right? Who are going above and beyond to help the community. As for the, pulling in Friday morning to my buddy's house looked a heck of a lot different than it did yesterday when I stopped by there. You have every single home on that street with every piece of content they have in their house in the front yard. And it is stacked up, 10, 15 feet high. everything. And you drive and you just can't imagine that devastation until you see it. And then you see everybody doing everything that they can, like, where are you going to live, right? So you're already starting to see some RVs in people's driveways. You're starting to see people reach out saying, hey, I need a place. I have, 2 kids. I have a small dog. Where do I live? Looking for rentals. Pinellas County is densely populated already. So our housing situation, very much like most parts of the country right now, housing is tough. And so this is going to just exacerbate that problem even more.
So many things going through my head, but I share a quick story. My pastor and his wife, they left Northern Virginia. They moved down to Sarasota, Oscar, Bradenton, and they just got a house. They went through one of the first hurricane that hit Tampa area in like 100 years.
Yeah.
And their house still under construction, and they're in a rental home. And they went away the weekend in New York for a wedding, and their entire rental home is just all under sand, while their primary home is still under construction.
Yeah,
it's tough, and I'm so glad listen to your story of people helping each other. There's some upsetting things coming from social media of people not being helped, they're being stranded, and watching Americans helping each other, just amazing thing.
It is. I think it also goes back to the infrastructure that we have, in the commitment from the politicians, because really, if you don't have a good plan when disaster strikes, you're in bad shape. Again, I think what's fascinating about this storm, and was a wake-up call, if you will, for those who, we've all seen it, right? Everybody on the Weather Channel and everything else. It's this, you're going to have a 20-foot storm surge, and then you have a 5-foot surge, and somebody stays in their home and says, well, it only came up that high. And so when the next storm comes, it's going to be a 20-foot surge, right? And it only came up to the first step last time. This time was different. And we saw a lot of people who said, well, I heard what they were saying, right? But I didn't heed the advice. And they stayed, and they watched this water, just come up and did not stop coming up. And so, vehicles were lost, boats were lost. You've seen all the video, boats and jet skis left in the middle of the street. And so I think it's going to change. People have a short memory. We were talking a few minutes ago about, what it looks like, as an insurance agent, talking about flood insurance, say in North Carolina or Georgia or one of these states, right? Where they've heard it. Maybe they've heard a story of somebody else being impacted. But even here in Florida, with people knowing hurricanes and the damage that can be caused, as well as the flooding, a lot of people still felt like, hey, I'm not in a flood zone. I'm not required to buy flood insurance, so I'll pass, right? Now, what we saw is most of the people along the coast were impacted by this. So most of them had flood insurance. I would hope if they have a mortgage on the home, they would have been required to carry flood insurance because it's in a mandatory zone. So I would think that most people have that coverage. But as these storms impact more and more folks, right, and as that water pushes more inland where it's not required, that's where we're really going to have a gap, and where people just aren't going to have the finances to be able to go ahead and dig out of a couple feet of sand or debris or whatever that looks like in their house. So what that looks like moving forward, we'll see. Mortgage companies are taking a look at this. Citizens actually passed, and I shouldn't say citizens, the Florida legislature a couple of years ago passed a law that said everybody who has a citizen's property insurance policy on their home must buy flood insurance. And that's a phased-in approach. And so I think it's 3 more years before everybody's required to have it. And at the time, I'm like, that is a stupid law. I believe people should be able to make their own decisions. If you have a mortgage and you're not in a flood zone, like, you shouldn't force somebody to do something. Well, I'm starting to look at it a little bit different, because so many people, I think, will have the coverage they need now because of this. And the intent behind the law was to be able to say, hey, if we had a slab claim, meaning if a flood came in and that home was gone, right? Is it wind? Is it flood? And they were really trying to say, hey, we want to make sure that we're paying the claims we're supposed to, but if it's flood, then, it needs to be taken care of by their flood policy. And so this requirement had a little bit of thought behind it for some other reasons. Maybe it would be one of those things that would cause somebody not to buy a Citizens policy and help them go into the private market. But I think that my mindset has maybe changed a little bit on that now, right? Which is, man, you're forcing people to do something, yes. But at the end of the day, how many people will find that benefit by having their hand pushed a little bit to do it? So I don't know, Jeff, I'm still a little bit, I could argue both sides of that, but I think that there's a lot of people who are probably going to be pretty happy when this thing is said and done that they were required to buy the insurance if it wasn't required. So if somebody's home was paid off, the mortgage company is not requiring flood, right? But if they had a Citizens policy, and you have to remember in Pinellas and Pasco County, where I looked this morning, I think with Citizens alone, there was almost 5,000 claims, right, in Pinellas County. In Pasco County, I think there was up to 2,000 or 3,000 claims. Those are typically older homes. A lot of those are insured with the state of Florida through the Citizens program, and so a lot of those folks would have been required to carry flood insurance. And so we're going to see what those numbers look like, coming out of this, and if there's a story to tell. But again, it's just heartbreaking. No matter what the situation is, it's absolutely heartbreaking what this storm did.
Not to mention, you have a lot of auto claims too. We talk about properties, but there's going to be a lot of auto claims.
There is, both auto, the recreational lines, boats. We have, like I said, a lot of recreational boats.
Oh man, I just thought about that.
More than anybody in the country, and so, people have been through this a lot of times. Along the coast have been through this before. Our marina, we have a boat. That we keep. We're about 15, 20 minutes away from the coast. We enjoy getting out and hitting some of our barrier islands. It's a great thing for families, to experience. And so we're fortunate to be able to go and enjoy that. Our marina was without power a couple of days. We had boats that were floated off the racks and strewn in the parking lot. And so that's happened, right? And I think that people are still trying to get a sense of what that looks like. And the carriers, from what I'm hearing so far, are responding. They understand that situation. So a lot of vehicles, lots of boats, jet skis, things like that. We'll see the damage, the toll at the end. But it impacts so many different aspects.
Well, hang in there, Jason. I wish I could do more, but I'm glad I was able to bring you on the show and tell the story. Usually I'm more engaging, but today is one of the things that this episode is so impacting, and I'm glad we got a chance to sit down here and download this episode. So I appreciate you coming on the show, and I know you're going to be super busy in the next couple of weeks. So, if there's anything we can help with, please let us know.
Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate you having me on. I know that, I speak for our agency, but a lot of insurance agents, who've been busy, really busy the last few days doing this. And, one last point as we go out is, we were getting messages in a lot of the agent, sites that are out there of folks in all parts of the country saying, Florida agents, what do you need? Are you without power? Do you need us to take some of your calls? Do you need us to help with claims and things like that? And so we're fortunate to have a large insurance organization where we have multiple offices. So if we have an office without power, we've got spots everywhere else. But, there's a lot of insurance agents that have a location. And if they're impacted by a storm like this, those customers are relying upon them, to be there. And so it's great to see within our industry, it's great to see how other agents step forward, provide a resource to it. And, they know at the end of the day, by being there and being there for the customer, it's great for our industry overall. And that's been great to see, as well as, the neighbors helping neighbors, that we had talked about a little bit earlier. So I appreciate having us on. I can tell you just on behalf of agents out there, it's great to be able to go ahead and tell the stories, though they're heartbreaking and sad. I think that this, again, is a time for our industry to be able to step up and show people why we are here.
That's a great closing point. One thing we didn't talk about, and I forgot to ask, you guys must have so many staff employees that's affected by this personally, and they still come into work while they're home probably in the same exact situation.
Yeah. So we were fortunate again, and I think we did kind of briefly touch on it, but we were fortunate that our team specifically, again, our agency were a little bit inland in Pinellas County, so we weren't impacted, and so our employees were great. They were able to show up. Our office was open. We had power, and so we were able to help from the beginning. But we did say to a few folks, listen, if you've got friends and family that you need to get out of this office and go help, we've got enough resources to be able to answer all of those incoming calls. And so I know that we had employees that were out very much like I was, cutting drywall, pulling stuff out of people's homes, on Friday, the day after the storm to help our neighbors out. So I think it's just what we do. I think that most people would do that in this situation, especially we have a large elderly population in Pinellas County, and they were reaching out saying, hey, we need help. And, the community responded phenomenally. And it's just great to see. I mean, you have folks, Jeff, who are literally driving up and down streets, handing out food, water, things like that. These are again, strangers that are just saying, hey, what do you need? Right. And just trying to connect folks. So if you have somewhere to stay, you're trying to match up, we have realtors right now who are basically waiving, I got a friend, Tiffany, who basically is saying, hey, listen, we will waive any fee that our brokerage normally charges to just help you with a lease or get you into a rental or anything like that. So it's people in her home. She has a home that was flooded, and the next day she's out helping other people. So it's cool to see, in the face of tragedy, people really making the lives better for the people next door.
This is a very touching episode, and I'm glad I was able to reach out to you and get you on the show and record this. So, Jason, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.